We've learned about the different phases of matter and the names of when you change between solid, liquid, and gas. If you haven't seen that video, please feel free to go back and look for it and watch it again. So now we'll learn about the properties of matter. There are two, physical and chemical. Let's start off with physical properties. Physical properties are very easy to find quickly. I have this putty, for example, and this putty, what do we see immediately? Well, for me, I see that it has a color. That color for me is yellow. Okay, what else can we see? We see that it doesn't have a really definite shape, but if I do this, it's kind of a sphere now. So we know that there's a shape. And if I put it in the palm of my hand, I can kind of get a good grasp of the size of the putty and also the weight. And so, size and weight are both also physical properties. And also density. Alright, now we know some of the easily found physical properties. Some other physical properties may require experimentation. For example, when you squish it like this, you squish it like that, or you hammer a substance into a thin sheet. That is a physical property called, well, first let's look how thin this is. That was very easy to do. And the physical property of an object being able to do that is called malleability. Now I'll give an example of this. So for malleability, we just squish this very easily into a thin sheet. How about this pen? I'm gonna try to squish it. Okay, let's look at this pen. Did it get thinner, just like the putty? No. So between these two objects, which one got thinner much easier? It was the putty. That means the putty is more malleable than the pen. Okay, so another one that it may not be a common word. It is viscosity. Now viscosity is usually referred to liquids, and viscosity is refers to the thickness of the liquid. And so I'll give you two liquids as an example. Let's say we have honey and water. Now, which of between these two is more viscous, or which one has the higher viscosity, the honey or the water? Just give a guess and I'll tell you the answer. Okay, hopefully you've made a guess. I'll tell you that the answer is honey. Honey is more viscous than water. Why? Because honey is thicker. It's harder for the liquid to flow easily. That's the meaning of being viscous. The more viscous, the thicker the liquid is. And that means the liquid will have a harder time to flow. And another one that you might not really know, but you may have observed it in everyday life, is conductivity. Now, conductivity is the ability for an object to have a current pass through it. And so, usually you would see the wires of your the charging cables of your phones, or the wires connected to your computer. Those are made out of metal on the inside, all the wires. The reason for that is because the metals, they are very conductive. They can allow the electric current to pass through very easily. And that's the reason why metal is used instead of rubber or this putty. Rubber and this putty are not very conductive. Electricity cannot pass through them easily. And so remember, the higher conductivity means the easier it is for a current to pass through that material. Alright, so I've gone through many physical properties. Let's go on to chemical properties. Chemical properties are not as easily seen as physical properties because chemical properties require a chemical reaction to be seen. One example of a chemical property that can be seen, or you may have seen, is called flammability. Flammability is the ability or the chemical property of a substance to ignite and catch on fire. One example of this is if you're starting a fire in the woods. Here we have a log, and this log is exposed to oxygen, and now we'll expose it to, or we'll put it in contact with a flame, which is a source of heat, and if it touches the flame, it will catch on fire as well. That is an example of the chemical property of flammability. This log is flammable, which means it can easily ignite and catch and have a fire. And what makes this a chemical property is that there is a chemical reaction going on here. When something catches on fire, it converts the oxygen around it, and the log is actually made out of mostly carbon. These two will react with the flame to create carbon dioxide and water. That shows the chemical property of the log, which is made out of carbon. Another chemical property that is kind of common, you may not have seen it every day, is corrosiveness. For something to be corrosive, it means that it will eat away another substance. An example is acid. We all know, maybe we have seen it in cartoons, that acids, they can eat stuff. So you wouldn't want to put your hand in an acid because it might eat your hand. That's an acid reacting with the substances it is in contact with to show its chemical property of being corrosive. Water, for example, is not corrosive at all, because if you put it on your hand, it will not eat away your hand compared to an acid. And those are just some examples of the properties of matter.